Welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're completely shattering traditional SaaS product management illusions. If you're building products in the financial space right now, the old playbook is literally a fast track to failure. We're diving deep into the gritty reality of prioritization in the 2026 FinTech sector. Let's get right into it.
Here's our roadmap for today. We'll start with the constrained innovation game, move through modern discovery frameworks, redefine activation, tackle scaling past legacy tech, and finally, look at the outcome-based metrics you actually need to be tracking.
Section 1. The Constrained Innovation Game. Let's define the actual game we're playing today.
There has been a massive paradigm shift. In traditional SaaS, you obsess over user delight, right? You want high agile velocity, and you want a booming net promoter score. But in 2026 FinTech, you aren't just delighting users anymore. Your primary job is failure containment. You have to survive internal audits. Honestly, your coding velocity means absolutely zero if your audit trail isn't perfectly complete. And that NPS, it's not going to secure your budget for next quarter. You know what will? Exception rate reduction. To put this into perspective, incumbent banks are spending a staggering £150 per customer just to maintain their legacy tech. £150. Meanwhile, nimble neobanks are spending about £20. That is a massive pound per pixel cost disparity. Basically, the legacy players are throwing frankly terrifying amounts of money at bloated IT just to keep the lights on, while newer entrants are innovating for a fraction of the cost.
And this brings up a crucial point. A hiring boom in this sector is not a bet on growth. It's a hedge against systemic risk. Every new product role tied to payment rails or fraud modeling exists primarily because regulators are demanding an airtight paper trail. Engineering just can't build these systems in a vacuum. As a product owner, you are the vital translator. You're standing right between the legal team demanding zero exposure and the engineering team begging for a 6-month timeline.
Okay, moving right along to Section 2, Discovery and Modern Frameworks.
You really have to understand the regulatory no zone. Consider this. There was a fast-scaling neobank where a product manager shipped a brilliant one-click savings feature. It spiked opt-ins by 37%. Huge win, right? No way. It was forcibly rolled back 2 weeks later. Why? The compliance boogeyman known as UDAP, unfair, deceptive, or abusive acts or practices. The PM hadn't consulted compliance pre-launch, and internal audit totally panicked. The reality is, in FinTech, you don't truly own the roadmap. You steward it through intense layers of strict control.
So, how do you actually build features safely on ancient legacy mainframes? First off, avoid the lifeboat strategy. That's where you try to build a brand new parallel stack and migrate everyone at once. It almost always sinks because of undocumented edge cases buried in code from 30 years ago. Instead, use a brownfield thin slice approach. Start with just one vertical product, like a basic savings account. Then, safely migrate the edge cases over time. It lets you bypass all that rigidity and actually deliver radical change without accidentally taking the entire bank offline.
Now, to bridge the gap between executive goals and agile delivery, lean portfolio management is an absolute game changer. Those static annual budgets, they just do not work in a fast-paced regulatory environment. By switching to dynamic funding that's tightly aligned to strategic OKRs, companies are actually seeing a 35% faster time to market. That is a massive advantage.
But how does this translate to your daily workflow? Look, building the wrong product really fast is still a massive failure. That's exactly why moving away from pure delivery velocity, where you just ship code as fast as humanly possible, and transitioning to dual-track agile is vital for survival. You absolutely must run continuous product discovery, testing hypotheses, and talking to compliance right alongside your delivery sprints.
Let's jump into Section 3, Activation, KYC, and Time to Value.
The true customer acquisition cost, or CAC, in FinTech is structurally way higher than in normal software. It's not just your marketing spend. It has to absorb heavy KYC and AML compliance costs, which can run anywhere from $5 to $25 per single customer. Then, add in the brutal 30 to 60% drop-off rate in the onboarding funnel because of all that friction. Suddenly, a $40 sign-up balloons into $120 per funded customer. This is exactly why you have to optimize for product-qualified leads, or PQLs, meaning users who have actually cleared compliance and can use the core product.
You can really hear the difference in mindset when you talk to people in the industry. A standard SaaS PM will pitch you on user delight, but a top-tier FinTech PM, they'll look at a feature and say, well, this increases our fraud surface. Here's how we tier verification and cap our exposure. Risk-adjusted thinking is always going to be blind user delight in this space. You have to balance the cool features with the very real risk tolerance of your institution.
Because of these risks, a sign-up that doesn't ultimately fund an account is honestly just an expensive vanity metric. Time to value is your real economic driver for product-led growth, and true activation means first funded account, not merely account created. You've got to streamline that onboarding funnel, getting the user from a sign-up to their first transaction as quickly and safely as possible.
All right, Section 4, scaling past the keep the lights on trap. In a lot of traditional banks, the vast majority of those massive IT budgets get entirely swallowed up by the keep the lights on trap, or KLO. Maintaining the legacy estate, squashing bugs, paying down technical debt, it basically chokes out any genuine innovation. You're left with this tiny sliver of budget to actually build the future. To break out of this cycle, your prioritization has to ruthlessly target operational efficiencies that will free up those trapped resources.
And scaling past this requires some incredibly gritty economic skills. You need to be able to map your feature changes directly to general ledger entries so the finance team actually trusts you. You have to deeply understand how float and hold periods can completely destroy your unit economics. You've got to debug split settlement reconciliations. Plus, using AI-driven backlog management is becoming essential just to cut through the insane noise of legacy bug fixes. In short, speaking the language of risk appetite is your new superpower.
When you nail those operational skills, you can aim for a really magic number, 120%. That represents best-in-class net revenue retention, or NRR. In FinTech SaaS, this is hands down the single best predictor of long-term enterprise value. It means your existing customers aren't just staying. They're actually expanding their usage and spending more, all because you're solving real, painful workflow problems for them.
Finally, Section 5, outcome-based agile metrics.
It is time for a serious reality check on your KPIs. You have got to shift away from standard SaaS growth numbers. Stop measuring agile velocity and start tracking audit trail completeness. Forget about obsessing over NPS, you need to focus on exception rate reduction, because manual exceptions will absolutely tank your profitability. And raw user signups, they mean nothing if your AML alert to conversion rate is a disaster, drowning your compliance team in false positives.
Operational KPIs are also shifting at light speed. Back in 2022, a 24 to 48-hour end-of-day batch reconciliation cycle was perfectly acceptable. Today, that is totally dead. Thanks to the massive rise of real-time payments, best-in-class reconciliation cycle times are dropping to well under a single hour. If your infrastructure can't handle that kind of speed, you're already falling behind.
So I'll leave you with this final, provocative question to wrap up our explainer today. Take a really hard look at your priorities, your metrics, and your features, and ask yourself, is your backlog a roadmap to growth, or is it a hedge against risk? Because in 2026, the very best product owners know that sustainable growth is inextricably linked to how brilliantly you manage and hedge against risk. Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive.